What's going on, everyone? Welcome to GDT Live, presented by the Game Day Tarps podcast. My name's Daeden Colton. Alongside me, Colton Davies. Today, we've got a good show today. John Viveiros from Athetic Hockey is joining us. And then later on, Matthew Fairburn, the senior Sabres reporter for The Athletic, going to be joining us to talk all things Buffalo, everything that they've done since the draft into free agency, the signing of Bowen Byram, and maybe the future of that club. But Colton, before we get into things today, there was something that you sent to me in the group chat and told me to give a listen to. And before we get into it, why don't we listen to it here for the viewers?
The American Hockey League versus the NCAA environment. I'm not sure that playing a Friday, Saturday schedule and then pumping iron and drinking smoothies all week is necessarily the best segue into what the AHL grind is like.
So that was Dan Neer, the WHL commissioner, on the Pipeline Show, hosted by Guy Flaming, a friend of the show. So, Colton, what do you think of that? What do you make of those comments by Dan Neer? I know you were the one that kind of brought it up to my attention, so I'll let you take the reins with it.
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of Dan Neer. I think everybody knows I'm a big, junior hockey guy. So those comments though are interesting to me. There's a lot of online negativity going around right now surrounding that clip. One thing I think people need to understand is the clip is taken out of context in a sense. So it's a 30-second clip. Like it's not, you don't get the full conversation, but I understand, I think, what Dan is trying to say in a small sense. But yeah, Willie, you're right. I am a junior hockey nerd. But I think in a small sense, it's a bit of, it's desperate. Like, it's tough to say though, because I feel like the WHL is just trying to, I know you're giving me that look. I feel like the WHL is just trying to, like, they don't know what the future holds right now, right? It's tough because you can look at the number of players that have come out of the CHL, that have come out of the WHL and gone on to have success in the NHL. But it's starting to look the same for the NCAA. So really, I think what Dan Neer should have kind of alluded to was that it's not about, the NCAA players going and pumping iron and drinking their smoothies and doing all that. It's just the WHL should be better positioning themselves to have players stay in the league. And that's just kind of my personal opinion on it. And whether the WHL hates me for that now, whatever. But I just think that as a whole, the WHL, the OHL, and the Q don't need to be making enemies with people from the NCAA.
Okay, here's my 2 cents on it. I kind of have two things to say. While you were bringing that up, I do think that, like, the WHL obviously has to find, like, and the CHL now, like you said, has to find a way to make players stay. I think that is probably out the window because for so long the CHL has been like younger players, 20-year-old, you age out, where college you're playing 23, possibly 24-year-olds. And it's always been about like the bigger game. They play a bigger style. So I think that is playing the biggest factor into it. People want to go develop their physical strengths. But what I will say about the clip is that I think Dan Neer could have just phrased it a little bit better. Obviously, it's taken out of context. Yeah. It's a short clip. But I think the WHL is more, like, their schedule is more similar to an AHL style of play than, I guess, the NCAA is, where you're only playing on the weekends. But, like, it's not taking away from the NCAA. Obviously, the NCAA is becoming the premier destination, but I think it could have just been phrased differently. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely could have been phrased differently. And, I have a lot of respect for Dan Neer. I have a lot of respect for the WHL and the CHL and the NCAA as well. We've had guys like Brian Schlossman on. We've had, or Brad, sorry, Brad Schlossman. We've had Mike McMahon on as well. Like, these are college hockey experts, and they've opened my eyes as a Western Canadian kid to what the NCAA is truly about. And for me, it's just like, I don't, okay, when I went on Morning Cup of Hockey with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohen a couple months ago, Colby asked me straight up what I thought, why I was angry at the time about the NCAA decision to allow to make CHL players go to the NCAA. At the time, I wasn't. I don't know if it was angry is the word, but I was just like, I was a WHL fanboy, I guess you could say, right? So I work for a
Well, you're not a fanboy, but like you work for the WHL. You've grown up around it. It's like
yeah,
your first knowing of junior hockey, of hockey, was probably going to a junior hockey game in Kamloops, right?
yes.
So that's all you knew.
Yeah, exactly. And so I looked at like the guys in the Blazers as like the NHL guys, right? So for me, like, I wasn't really angry. I was just more like confused, I think, by what the decision was and why players would leave Western Canada to go play in the NCAA. And now, guess what? I've had months to listen to people. I've had months of conversations with NHL scouts, with people in college hockey, with Colby Cohen, with Johnny Lazarus, and my mind has changed completely. I fully get it now. It's about these players better developing themselves and having other developmental paths to get to the NHL. And I think the best thing you can do now as a player is play in the WHL or the CHL and then go play a year in college, which is what we're seeing a lot happen. Um, I've been very vocal on here about how Ryder Ritchie is one of my favorite players in the world right now. Well, he left the WHL. He's going to go play at BU. And I think that's fantastic. So my whole stance on it has drastically changed because I'm just more open to how this is kind of going forward, right? But we'll see, because I think the biggest thing is this is all new to everybody, right? So the CHL, the NCAA, everybody will kind of understand in a few years what is kind of, portrayed.
Yeah, I definitely think, like we had in the comments here, Jeremiah Maxwell says this will only benefit the game and help grow it. The WHL isn't going anywhere, and
Yeah.
I guess without further ado, we credit the Pipeline Show for that clip. But we do have John Viveiros backstage, so why don't we welcome him on from Hot Take Hockey, John Viveiros. John, welcome in, man.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
How's
Do
it
you want to
going
go
today?
with
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, cool.
Let's start with the off season so far. What has been kind of your biggest takeaway from the off season? Have you been let down by kind of what's happened? Have you think the insiders were right? It's been busy. What's your kind of take on the off season?
Yeah, I guess if you're going overall, I mean, everyone's looking at next offseason in terms of the free agent class, right? So I think that's kind of the expectation we're looking at next year. We're looking at 2026. You know what? It's interesting because I think when you look at some of the teams that really needed to make that improvement, like I've seen some of the markets and some of the fan bases, like, of course, it's so easy to go to Toronto with the loss of Mitch Marner, but I've talked to a lot of Sabres fans, like Buffalo. You've made a lot of, like, I would say, fit type of moves, but not really that big fish that you maybe need to kind of go over the hump. Or even a team like Edmonton, you've kind of taken maybe a few steps back in terms of like eliminating some veterans and still haven't gotten that number one goalie. So to be honest, I'm not really disappointed with the offseason because I never really thought it was going to be a crazy one. I was always looking at 2026. But I think where the disappointment lies is every team, or I shouldn't say every team, but I would say most of the teams that needed that one big thing haven't really gotten that one big thing yet. So I think that's kind of the interesting part of the offseason so far.
You touched on Mitch Marner there for a second, and last night I saw on Twitter someone posted that the NHL kind of missed the mark, burying the return game on a Friday in January. Do you think the NHL should have done something a little bit different there and maybe made a bigger event out of the Marner return?
Yeah, no, I know that's been kind of a conversation. Yeah, like the easy answer is like put it on a Saturday night hockey, and yeah, you obviously get the eyes. But I think maybe in their perspective, it's you get the eyeballs anyways on Saturday night, whether it's the Canadian teams. I mean, I think the NHL's kind of always been like that, where they balance a little bit of that like kind of heritage and they balance what they've done in the past. I do think sometimes they do need to maybe look at the other leagues and kind of feed into the theatrics and feed into the drama a little bit. I mean, they've done that with like the newer teams coming in. Like Vegas definitely feeds into a lot of the drama, and you see it with their social media pages. So don't get me wrong. I think when it comes around to the game itself, I think Vegas and the social media are going to be making some comments. But at the same time, I think for Mitch Marner himself, they're probably going to protect him a bit. Like they're gonna probably keep him out of the light. They're gonna keep him away from the media. So it's a bit of that balance, probably on Vegas's perspective. I'll throw it on the Toronto side of things. Toronto's probably one of the biggest markets in hockey. I mean, a lot of people, whether you love Toronto or hate Toronto, you like following Toronto. So when you see Toronto get out in the first round or wherever they get out, you're following. So I think every single person that likes hockey would be following that game regardless too. So I mean, Friday night, whether guys are going out for beers or everyone just getting around on the sofa, I think people will still be watching regardless. It's still going to be a Friday night. So I don't have as big of an issue as some people, but I do see what you're saying. I think coming off of back-to-back also for Vegas as well, I think it was a little sneaky for sure.
Do you think with Toronto making that Henry Thrun to Ryan Reeves trade kind of bolsters that back end a little bit?
You know what? I mean, I think it's just another option back there. Like, I don't think they're going to touch the defense too much, but I've kind of hinted at, and I know some people have kind of picked up on it a little bit too, is like, if you're going to try to get a big fish up front, like it's not going to come for free. So, you know what? I know a lot of people, I mean, they've ripped me a little one is like Brandon Carlo. You just acquired Brandon Carlo last year. And my whole thing is like, love or hate Morgan Riley. He's got a no movement clause. They're not moving McCabe or Tanev. So Carlo just ends up by default being the odd man out unless one team out there has a lot more value towards Benoit and OEL than other guys. So I just think Carlo would be the one guy to get that top six forward addition. So I think with that in mind, it wouldn't be like the end all be all if you traded Carlo because you have 7 to 8 other NHL caliber defensemen. Carlo would be a great number 4. Don't get me wrong, and I think he solidifies that top 4 for Toronto. But I think in the grand scheme of things, your forward group in the top 6 is lacking. So sometimes you have to give up to get in other positions, right?
What do you make of the addition of Nicholas Waugh?
Yeah, I think. I mean, Bruce Cassidy, who's obviously coached him, kind of said it best. Like I think what we've seen in Vegas from him is kind of his floor, to be honest. Like I think he's a minimum of 10, 15 goal guy. Like he's a penalty killer. He's got good speed, good edge. Like 6'3" doesn't come easy. So like the fact that he is around that 6'3", 6'4" size, I've also been like begging this team to like look into that type of right shot center specifically because we've seen this team for so long. I think the last time where they really had like a right shot presence up the middle was like back to the Tyler Bozak days. So it's been a minute since they had like a strong right shot presence up the middle. So now having Nicholas Waugh, I think even though, yeah, maybe he's not going to be the most electric offensive presence, but I've even made the argument that Craig Berube's got options now. Like if you really want to build out a top 9, you could give Nick Waugh some shifts with William Nylander and then put John Tavares as like a third line center role. It doesn't have to be the everyday thing, but it gives you kind of options to really spread out the lineup.
What do you make of the Jordan Kai rumors, and what have you kind of heard that you can kind of speak on?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, I think for me, like, St. Louis has always kind of given me a certain style. Doug Armstrong, kind of what I've heard talking to different people who talk to Doug Armstrong. He likes a certain style of game. So to give it to you easy here, he loves Robert Thomas because of how Robert Thomas plays. And I know Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou have really built off of each other in different ways. And it's good to have that balance, and you need that different blend. But you see the type of guys that they've drafted. Jake Neighbors is like the perfect Doug Armstrong type of player. So they really like building around those players, adding Dylan Holloway again. That's why I was a little surprised they traded Bolduc, but it was to get a need that they wanted on that right side in my view. But I think for me, Kairu's not going to just get tossed away. Like I think when there was the conversations around Montreal or any other team, it was going to have to be a really big package. So I don't think he was ever being like shopped heavily, but I
Mhm.
can understand that, especially with a big contract like that. It's before a no movement clause kicks in. I mean, again, I'm making this about Toronto again, but everyone can see sometimes when a player gets their no movement clause kick in, there's no going back sometimes. So you do have to consider the options before that kind of kicks in, and that was what was happening with Kairu.
Switching gears, I know Daeden was a big fan of this. He's a Montreal guy. What did you make of the Noah Dobson trade? And do you think that we've heard kind of some people say that Islanders fans in specific, that he might not excel in Montreal, but I've got a hunch that he's going to do just fine there. What do you make of Dobson?
Yeah, no, I think he's going to do well. I don't think they actually make that trade if they don't make that push and squeak into the playoffs last year, to be honest. Like, I think there was a quick, I don't even know if it's a reminder, but maybe like a wake up call being like, hey, we actually might be there now. Like, I think, of course, Lane Hutson's kind of picked that up. And I think you remind yourself that you really do need that offense from the back end. I think having that 1-2 punch now with Lane Hutson and Dobson, it kind of puts a bit of a, I would say, a significant role on Caden Gooley to be kind of that leader on the back end, that two-way guy. And sure, he can still provide offense, but it's kind of a scenario where you can kind of have that 1-2 punch on the power play with Hudson and Dobson. I also think it's nice for Dobson too now because he's not like forced to like be that only guy on his team for offense. And he was kind of that for the Islanders a little bit, right? Like if you look at some of the guys in the Islanders, it was like that Islanders type of hockey. It was like Pulock, Pelech, Scott Mayfield, very rugged, just like simple puck off the glass, like quick breakout, not too much like end-to-end action is what I'm trying to get at. So Montreal's got, in my eyes, they've got three guys that can kind of contribute to end-to-end action, and then they've got three guys that can kind of play a little bit more physical. So I like the balance for Montreal. I also think the lack of pressure now for Dobson to produce that offense with a guy named Lane Hutson that's going to probably be one of the top 10 defensemen over the next 10, 15 years. I think it's not a bad situation to be in.
Do you think the Atlantic Division, or not the Atlantic Division, but the battle between Montreal and Toronto in the Atlantic Division, do you think that becomes just a little bit more spicy than it has in the years past? Because obviously Montreal hasn't really been competing since like the 2021 era, but now things just get even better when Montreal and Toronto face each other.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's interesting because I look at like Montreal, they've got the better depth right now in my eyes. I think the goaltending is a question mark because when Montembeault's at his best, it's like he's an unreal goalie, but of course that's an if. And but I think going into next year, it's going to be definitely a more consistent battle. I think you're probably going to see a matchup in the next 2-3 years between the two teams again. So I think it's better for hockey when teams like Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa are all in the playoffs and kind of getting that opportunity to maybe battle it out in back-to-back rounds. Not to say that I want the Florida teams to get dumped to the side just easy, but I might be getting a little sick of it at some point here. So getting Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, those rivalries, I mean, I might regret saying that in a couple of years, but you know what? I think those rivalries definitely bring the craziness of kind of watching for the fans, but also kind of the rivalry with the players.
Yeah, it's just too bad that the Boston Bruins are kind of trending the way they are. They're not really the big bad Bruins anymore, but if we could get an Atlantic Division with the Red Wings, the Habs, the Leafs, and the Bruins all at the top, like the 2010 era, I wouldn't mind it.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, you know what? I wouldn't count even the Bruins out. Like until they move Pasternak and McAvoy, like those two guys are legit pieces in my eyes. Like I think a lot of people are forgetting about McAvoy. I've seen some top defense lists recently, and like McAvoy's like nowhere to be found. And I'm like, okay, guys, like he got injured. He had some injury issues. Like let's not forget what Charlie McAvoy can be because he could be a top 5 defenseman when he's at his best. So for me, until those guys are off your team, I wouldn't even count out the Bruins. Like I don't know if you were getting to this, Daeden, but I was just gonna say like I actually think the Atlantic Division's the best division in hockey right now. I just think the only team for me that like it's kind of like wait and see and like they have to prove me otherwise is the Buffalo Sabres, Like they just haven't
Yeah.
done it in so long. So they're the only team, like, I'm sorry, you got to prove us otherwise. But every other team to me, like, could be in the mix in that division right now.
Yeah, 100%. I was actually going to ask you that the next question, but yeah, you brought it right out of my mouth. And I do think that the Atlantic Division is the best competitiveness wise. Like, obviously, you've got great players like McDavid over in the West, McKinnon over in the West, but the Atlantic is just, every team is very competitive. The division is tight. That's what I think, and it'll take a couple of years, I think, for any division to kind of get up and match it.
Yep. No, I'm with you on that. I think yes, maybe a couple of divisions are more top heavy, but I mean, Florida and Tampa have won the most cups like in the last 5 years, so I think that also kind of says something.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, John, who do you think has had the most improved offseason? Who's kind of looking like the best team going into 2025, 2026 here?
Yeah, I mean it's a great question. I think in this weird way, like I think Carolina,
Mhm.
like to me, like Ehlers adds that. I think there's like younger players obviously coming as well. So like Stankoven another year, like some of these guys another year. So I think some of that's kind of going on for Carolina. I think another team, I mean, maybe this is a bit of a surprise, but like I think the Rangers actually adding Gavrikov, like I think that was exactly what they needed on that back end. Like I think sometimes there's just too much distractions in New York, and I think Gavrikov's going to be that perfect balance for Fox. Kind of what we were saying earlier, Colton, like I don't think this has been like enough of a like massive offseason to say like, oh, this one team's going from like basement to glory per se.
Yeah.
But I think those two teams for me are kind of on my radar. I think the Rangers are kind of eyeing them to be a bit of a bounce back. Beyond that, I do like what Minnesota did. It's a little low key, and I'm still kind of waiting to see what happens with Marco Rossi. Like I like the Tarasenko edition, and it's kind of like not necessarily guys that they added this offseason, but I think like David Juracek, a full year of him, like Steve Bullion, a full year of him, and then some of the young guys coming up. And then they're going to have the goaltending duo of Gustafsson and Wallstead for a full year too. So like just things like that I'm really looking at for certain teams. But yeah, like looking again back at the offseason, like I guess one of the bigger fish that went to a different team was Ehlers. I guess Carolina's probably right back in the mix again to be maybe a Final Four team.
Talking about Minnesota, you think Tarasenko and Kaprizov might spark a little Russian connection there?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I was joking around. I was saying like maybe you just get like a third like top Russian around the league. Use Rossi as that trade chip. I mean, hey, if Pittsburgh wants to toss Malkin somewhere and Fleury wants to give a good recommendation on Minnesota, maybe throw Malkin between Tarasenko and Kaprizov, and that could be pretty fun going into the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. That would get some goals. That would get something going for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm throwing a little hot take on the show here.
No, I love that.
That's what you're here for.
We got a couple more minutes with you, John. You work for the Brantford Bulldogs as well. I just wanted to highlight this player, Jake O'Brien. Got picked up in the draft in the first round there. We actually are having Jake on the show here shortly, so really looking forward to that. What can you say about O'Brien this past season, and what do you like of him?
Well, that's awesome. Great get on the show. Yeah, no, Jake's a great kid. Interacted with him a couple times. You know what? I think for me, and I've said this a couple times on different shows, like the visibility for him and the IQ is just ridiculous. Like I've seen this kid do so many different things where it's just like, how do you see that from the back of your head? Spinorama plays, like cross crease plays where he's not even looking, moving up and down the ice. And I also think his defensive game is pretty underrated as well. Makes a mistake, doesn't want to give up on a play. So there's just so many things I like about Jake's game. And obviously he's kind of been a guy that's been watched out at a younger age as well. But I think the fact that he had that kind of year, but also I think it's just the little things and that IQ. For me, I was, again, I'm biased, but I was really high on Jake going top 10. I think, and two, I just talked about it with, again, making this a Leafs thing again, but like the right shot center thing is a factor as well. Just like the right shot defense thing is a factor. And I think that also gives an advantage to Jake. I think one thing that we've talked about with Jake before, like I've talked about on other shows, and I'm sure he probably acknowledges it, is like maybe like the strength of, I mean, like body and probably his shot. I think his shot accuracy, like I don't think there's an issue there. I think maybe he wants to put a little bit more power behind it. But that's like when we're getting into the nitty gritty, like trying to find flaws in the game. And I think when you're trying to find flaws in a player's game, I think I think that's when you know he's in a pretty good spot.
Since we're talking about Brantford, how big is it for the Bulldogs to get Ryder Bolton?
Oh man, I mean, I think the biggest thing. So like the boys lost kind of Flory and Jack-Eye in that room a little bit, and like you know what, like the skill set in that room was never a question, like whatsoever. The skill set on the ice was never a question. It was just a little bit of like watching Nick Lardis get hurt in the playoffs, and sometimes maybe like a little bit of a lack of response, because there's like sometimes there's the guys out there that can't do it or just shouldn't do it. Like I think for me, there was a couple of guys that are just like bigger on the team last year that I felt for, because it was like a little bit of an expectation for them to do something. So I think Ryder Bolton is like, he knows his role. Like there's no confusing it. There's no like, let's figure it out. Like he's going to stand up for the boys. He's going to throw some hits. He'll probably drop the gloves quite a few times. That's his role. So it won't get mixed up.
Welcome to Brantford, I'd say, to Ryder Bolton, I guess. And I would expect him to have Brantford. A pretty good season as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great ad. It's a great ad from Spencer.
Definitely.
What did you, speaking of Spencer Hyman, we're having him on the show next week too. So that'll be fun.
Awesome.
Speaking of Brantford, you guys haven't had, it's a new franchise, of course, from Hamilton. So you haven't had a lot of jerseys per se, but do you have a favorite OHL jersey that you like other than Brantford's?
Ooh, you got me. I don't know. I'm only focusing on Brantford boys these days. So I'm just trying to think.
That's fair, because we figured that would be the case. But I was like trying to think. I'm like, well, they got lots of jerseys with Hamilton, but not a lot with Brantford, right? Like,
well, I'll this may be a cop out, but I saw this jersey again in the stands this past year, and the blue Hamilton Bulldog jerseys when like Carey Price was on the team, those get me. Those are a cool throwback. Yes. So maybe a bit of a cop-out answer, but those jerseys hit nice for me.
No, that's perfect. I agree with that. Actually, I agree with that. Hey, John, thanks so much for joining us today. Really enjoy your work over on Hot Take Hockey and everything you do there. Fantastic channel.
Awesome, boys. Yeah, reach out anytime. Talk soon.
Have a good one.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Well, Colton, a great episode there with John Viveiros from Hot Take Hockey. We do have Matthew Fairburn joining us, the senior Sabres reporter for the Athletic. So without further ado, why don't we welcome him on? Matthew, how's it going today?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Not too bad, not too bad. Ready to talk some Sabres.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Let's go back to the draft. What did you make of the JJ Peterka trade?
Yeah, it was definitely, it makes up really the biggest move that they've made this offseason and the bulk of their offseason work. It was, I wouldn't say a shock. Wasn't something that 6 months ago you had on your offseason bingo card, but as the summer rolled along and it became clear that contract talks were not going anywhere and that JJ Peterka would welcome a change of scenery, you started to think that it was inevitable that he would get traded. And so it was kind of the timing of it right near midnight Eastern time when it goes down. Luckily I was awake, so it wasn't the trade itself wasn't a total shock. And I think you look at the return and people in Buffalo immediately, I think, were a little bit underwhelmed. But I think when you peel back and look beneath the surface at the players that they got, Michael Kesselring and Josh Doan, first of all, they're two guys that are really going to help build a strong culture, right? These are guys that they work, they are great teammates, they have leadership qualities, even though they're a bit younger. And there's a lot of upside with these players. Kesselring showed that he can be a top 4 defenseman last year when he got the chance in Utah. And I think Josh Doan, he hasn't had a chance to be like a full-time NHL player, right? He's kind of, bounced back and forth a little bit. But I really do think there's a path to him being a top 6 forward, if not next season, like down the road. He's got just a complete toolkit that maybe he certainly doesn't profile as like a 80, 90 point player, but he brings a toolkit that can fit in on one of those top 2 lines with the right, players, and he's going to play an interesting role. So it was a big time trade, and I'm curious to see how it'll work out because you're trading away a 68-point player who's 23 years old, but he's a bit one-dimensional. Peterka is at this stage in his career, and you're getting back 2 guys that should make your team more defensively responsible and a little bit harder to play against.
Matthew, did you ever think there was any time that the Sabres were going to try and whip something up for maybe the 4th overall pick there in Utah? Because as that was going on, as that pick was being broken, Colton and I and the other guys here on the podcast were thinking, are they about to try and get the 4th overall pick here? Is that what's happening? But obviously minutes later, it wasn't the case. But was there anything ever floating around in Buffalo about the 4th overall pick maybe being acquired from Utah?
I'm sure it got tossed around in trade discussions. Obviously I'm thinking a lot of stuff was on the table in this deal, bouncing back and forth. When you're talking about a player of Peterka's caliber, it opens up the trade talks to a lot of different pieces. They did, the Sabres did want pieces that could help them right now. That's really been the theme of a lot of their offseason trade conversations, whether it was Peterka or more recently Bowen Byram before they extended him to a 2-year deal. They're not really in the position to be collecting future assets. Now, the 4th overall pick, I think, probably fell into a middle area, right? Where it's not helping you maybe right this second, but it's a 4th overall pick, right? That could help you sooner rather than later. And there was some big time talent on the board at 4. But to get these 2 pieces, I was surprised. Kesselring was a name that I had circled for a while, just looking at their depth chart, thinking this is a guy that's blocked from minutes, but could play high in the lineup, like a really good piece. Doan, though, I almost didn't even have on my radar because I just thought there's no way this organization is trading a Doan, right? Like, and the way this guy plays, the way he forechecks, the 200-foot game, just the way he profiles to be a really solid, NHL player for a long time. So to get both of those pieces that are going to help you right away and into the future, assuming they can, keep them here long term, I think was more a priority. And probably in Utah's case, right? If you're giving up the number 4 pick, are you giving up anything extra along with that?
Mm-hmm.
You imagine the holes that would be in Buffalo's lineup if they had done something that was centered around Peterka and number 4. They just would have been, creating more needs to fill via free agency, and it wasn't a strong class. So I understand the route they took, but number 4 certainly would have been a really interesting piece. Would have made draft weekend pretty fun.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We have a question coming in here from Randy in the chat. He wanted to ask if you yourself would have offered JJ his 7.5 mil.
It's interesting because I don't mind the number. I think for Utah, it's a worthwhile. There's a little bit of risk baked into a contract like that, but it's a worthwhile risk. Like, you can see at the very least that this guy is going to be a productive scorer and should have that upside. I think the Sabres' preference at the beginning of the summer was to get something done, and they probably would have been talking about something in that dollar range. I don't mind moving on from the player, and I guess, like, for me, if I'm the Sabres, would I have given him that contract? I almost prefer what they got to extending JJ Peterka, only because I think Peterka already was showing some signs that he didn't really want to be in Buffalo. And he also, as I mentioned, does have sort of a one-dimensional component to his game, right? He scores.
Mm-hmm.
He had 68 points. He is, great off the rush. He's got some good playmaking ability, but the defensive part of his game needs some work. And the Sabres have other players coming up in the system that have similar profiles to Peterka. They don't have really a Kesselring or a Josh Doan. And that's where, to me, the extension, it would have been almost riskier for the Sabres, knowing that he already wasn't happy. Kevin Adams mentioned something that I think really applies to this situation, where he said, if somebody isn't happy, trying to make them happy with more money isn't always going to work out, right? Eventually, whatever is making them unhappy is going to resurface. And so I think they definitely benefited their culture in the locker room by doing this, and they may very well have benefited their on ice play. Like, can they make up the goals elsewhere, I think is going to be the big question. But they got two players that are going to make it, they're going to be better at keeping the puck out of their own net because of these two players. And so would I have given him that money? I would have been a bit hesitant in Buffalo, just given all the context around the situation.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. And looking still at the draft, what did you think of the pick with Reddy Murtka? He's a guy that I got to watch a lot this year. I work in the WHL for the Kamloops Blazers, so he came through a couple times, and for his size, just an extremely mobile defender and somebody that I think is in a class of his own. He's very elite. What did you make of the selection there?
Yeah, it was, I think, the safe pick on the board for them, really. I mean, I see him as a guy that seemingly has a high floor, right? It's pretty easy to picture a player that can move like that and that is that size playing in the NHL. At the combine, he stood out to me because the big question I had about him coming into that week was, boy, this is a big player who doesn't necessarily have the mean streak physicality that you would hope comes with that size. And he mentioned that a big learning curve for him was at younger levels. He was always so much bigger than everybody that he was constantly getting called for penalties when he was, playing, so physical. And he started to realize, like, okay, everybody else has caught up. Now I can layer that back into my game. Now, will he do it? That's the big question. Can he be that sort of, shut down type of defender that you want with a player that size? But look, right-handed defensemen are constantly in demand. Right-handed defensemen who have the upside to play in the top four, the way I think Murtka does, those types of players are always going to be commodities. And so at the very least, you have somebody that I think is a really good asset to develop. And the way the board fell, it did feel like the safest pick for them. Right-handed defenseman is actually now almost their biggest surplus in their prospect pool. They've got quite a few of them developing now. But this is a guy that, it'll take some time with him, I think. But they've got somebody who can, potentially develop into a top four guy for them. If not, he's a usable trade piece at some point here in the next few years.
Another defenseman, Bowen Byram. So you touched on it a little second ago. Signed his 2-year, $6.25 million deal. Was that a shock to you? Like, were you expecting him to get traded maybe? What did you kind of figure would happen with Byram?
As the summer went along, it started to feel more and more like he might stay. And that was just because if the trade market were strong, they would have found a deal, right? And it's not that guys can't get traded later on into the summer, but, teams start to have most of their roster set. Some new no trade clause, start to kick in for different guys. And it started to feel like if it hasn't happened yet, and if Kevin Adams is openly saying he's willing to trade this player and yet he hasn't done it, that there was a decent chance that he would come back. For it to get done before arbitration was a little bit of a surprise. I thought maybe they would just take it right to arbitration and let that decide it. But I think the looming arbitration hearing made them get to the table and say, look, this is going to get to arbitration. You're probably going to take the 2-year award. What number works for you on a 2-year deal? Like, why not just figure this out? it doesn't also prevent them, from trading him. They could still do that. I think the idea that there's some school of thought that, oh, if you didn't have a contract, he's more tradable because a team might want to lock him up long term. But I think when you look at Byram and the profile of his career to this point, there might have been some hesitancy from other teams about what is he worth on a long-term deal. So the cost certainty of 2 years, $6.25 million to figure out just how good is this guy, which I think in his age 24 and 25 seasons that this deal, takes him through, you should have a pretty good picture of just how good is this guy, right? He's a number 4 overall pick who was a big part of a Stanley Cup winning team, but it's been a little bit up and down. He had the concussion problems in Colorado. He played all 82 games last season, set a career high in points, but I think there is still some question about just how good is he? Can he drive his own pair? Can he be a top pair guy, or is he more of a second pair guy? So finding the right number for him on a long-term deal was probably going to be a challenge for any team acquiring him. So I don't think he's any less tradable, and the Sabres can keep him, and he's great on a pair with Dahlin. They showed that last year. And maybe at some point over the next 2 years, it will make sense. The market will materialize to trade him, or he plays 2 years for you, plays well, and goes to free agency potentially. That happens all the time around the league. It's not the end of the world. They traded Casey Middlestat for him, and I would say they won that deal in a landslide. So, he's the type of guy that I think can park all this offseason trade talk, show up to training camp, and be a great teammate and a great pro. He has been every step of his career. So I'm interested to see, will they move him before training camp? I think it's less likely now that they signed him. And, how will he play? How will this whole situation maybe motivate him to show what he is and drive his value up? Because now he's looking at unrestricted free agency when the cap is going to skyrocket. He has a chance to really cash in if he puts together a couple nice seasons.
Matthew, I was looking at the Sabres schedule that was released. Obviously, everyone saw the Buffalo Sabres social content with all the wings and stuff like that. But I was looking at the full schedule, and for the month of October specifically, got 11 games, 7 at home, 4 on the road. And one of those games on the road is a home and home with the Leafs, who they don't have to travel very far for. So my question to you is, how important is it for a young team that's looking to snap a long streak of not being in the playoffs? How important is it for them to be at home to start the season for most of the month?
It's super interesting because home has not necessarily been the kindest place to the Sabres over the last few years. They finished last season really strong, 14-3 in their last 17 home games. But they've had some attendance issues over the last handful of years because of the struggles of the team. And, the home crowd has voiced their displeasure on a number of occasions. And so it is really important that they have a chance here to establish a home ice advantage, carry over that, whatever was working at the end of last season, because the year before they were really bad at home. To have a 14-3 record in your final 17 home games is pretty promising. Maybe something's clicking. Establish that home ice advantage and get off to a good start. I think it's 10 of their first 14 games are at home. And you mentioned that one of those road games is the Leafs. 2 of them are Boston and 1 is Montreal. So not a lot of travel early on in their schedule. Not necessarily the easiest opponents, right? There's some tough opponents mixed in there. They've got Florida coming to town. They've got Colorado coming to town. But you're at home and you have a chance to win over or start to win over a fan base that's very frustrated and a fan base that is skeptical to buy into what they're building here in year 6 with Kevin Adams as general manager. So you get some wins under your belt in October and do it in front of a home crowd. Maybe people start to buy in and you can really, build some of that good mojo at home that they badly need. It would be great to see the building fill up again. I mean, they were down near the bottom of the league in attendance again last season. And, anybody who was around when this team was good can tell you that Buffalo can be a real home ice advantage when the place is full and people are really behind the team. And it's up to the players, it's up to the team to get the fans behind them at this point, right? It's been 14 years without the playoffs. This city has seen a lot of bad hockey and endured a lot of bad hockey. So it's up to the team to look at that schedule, look at those 10 home games in the first 14 and say, let's build something here. Let's get this started on the right foot. Last season, they started the season in Prague. So they had a shortened training camp. They went to Germany for an exhibition. They played in Prague. Like, that's a challenging travel situation to start your season. This is a comfortable one. You don't have to go more than an hour plane ride away for basically the first month of the season. Take advantage of it and get some wins under your belt because as is always the case, right? If you got all those home games, like road games are coming, right? It's an even split. And they've got like a 12-day road trip in December that's going to be really challenging. So take advantage of it because if you get off on the wrong foot, it's going to be hard to climb out of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if they can get the fans on the right foot, you look at what the Bills have done in Buffalo, getting the fans back into it. So we know the fans in Buffalo can get really loud. But another thing I wanted to ask you, coming up in September from the 11th to 15th is the Prospects Challenge. That includes Buffalo, Pittsburgh, New Jersey, Columbus, and Boston. Are you planning on going to that and looking at any prospects there?
Yeah, I love going to that event every year. It's been, I feel like one of the real perks of being in Buffalo as a hockey writer is that, the combine's here because, because of the Harbor Center that, Terry Pagula built that, going on about 15 years ago now to be the type of facility that would attract these types of events. And so the combine is here and the Prospects Challenge is here every year. And it's a great chance to see, some of the Sabres young players that usually, you don't get the college guys obviously at that, but you should get a lot of the guys that are going to be in Rochester this year and they have a good pool. So, Noah Ostlund, Constable Helenius, these guys that are on the verge of breaking through. It's a good chance for them to create some momentum for themselves. Last year, Yuri Kulik was one of the better players at this event and ended up, on the Sabres roster and ended up on the top line for a good stretch of the season. So you never know who's going to come out of this and, get a strong start to going into training camp. So it's awesome to have the event here and see, a lot of different, writers and team staff come through from all these different teams. And it really, for me, it always signals the start of hockey season is, mid-September, going down to the Harbor Center and seeing it's also more fun than development camp too, because it's against other teams. There's a level of competition that just doesn't exist at development camp. So always a fun event.
One last one from me here, Matthew. I watched Yuri Kulik in Halifax at the World Juniors. Phenomenal player. And obviously you said he made some first line appearances last year. How much did that help him playing against other teams' top lines at such a young age?
I think it was huge. He also didn't look out of place, which was really interesting, just given, following his development over the last few years in Rochester. He jumped right into Rochester as an 18-year-old and played in the AHL at a really young age. And that was the thing that they were trying to work on with him, was just rounding out his game away from the puck, doing the right things defensively. But even with kind of an old school coach in Lindy Ruff, who really doesn't have time for guys who aren't doing things the right way, he trusted Yuri Kulik. He became a good and responsible player away from the puck. His skating is excellent. And so he really fit in that role nicely. I'm interested to see how they put the lines together, because there's a chance he'll be back on the top line. He, Zach Benson, and Tage Thompson played well together at the end of last season, but now Josh Norris will be healthy, and that'll be, a different piece to maybe use in that spot. So maybe Kulik goes down to the second or third line, but to have that experience and the confidence going into the summer, and then he got to play in the AHL playoffs and be, a leader for the Amherst. as they went a couple rounds deep into the AHL playoffs. He should come in ready to roll. They need him. When we talk about replacing the goals from JJ Peterka, Kulik is a big candidate for that. I mean, he had 15 last year, but with a full season under his belt, and now he'll spend the entire year presumably with the Sabres. That is a chance for him to really take a jump forward in production. So he'll be definitely one of the players to watch when the season starts.
Well, I got one more as well. Actually, I have two more, and then we'll let you go. My first one is Tage Thompson. He's hit 47 goals. He had 44 last year. Can he hit 50? Like, I've been a big believer that he is a 50 goal scorer, and I make a bet with my best friend every year for $50 that he's going to score 50 goals, and he always comes up short. I'm going to do it again. Do you think he can hit 50 goals though?
I think he can. If he stays healthy, I think he can. He can, when he gets hot, it's something to behold. I mean, he really can pile up goals in bunches. Depending on who's playing on his line, if people stay healthy around him, I think he has a real chance. I also think he's got a real fire underneath him over not making that Four Nations team last year and trying to really solidify his spot on the Olympic roster. So he's actually already back in Buffalo on the ice, getting work in. I see him having a massive season. He had the great experience to go over to the Worlds, win a gold medal. This guy really wants to win. He really wants to be part of bringing winning hockey back to Buffalo, and he badly wants to play on that Olympic team. I think he's pretty much solidified his spot already, but I don't think he's going to leave anything to chance. And I think health is always the big question with him. It seems like every year a little something pops up for a little while, right? Whether it's a back or, he's had just little things that have, hampered him over the last few years. But if he can stay healthy, he's got 50 goals. He's got that kind of potential. Whether he hits it or not depends on a lot of factors around him. But we've seen what he can do, when he gets cooking, and it's pretty special to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of my favorite players in the league, that's for sure. One last one for you, Matthew. The Buffalo Sabres have been around for a long time. What is your favorite jersey that they've ever worn?
That's a good question. I think actually we did something for the Athletic about, the best jersey that a team has. And I actually think the current iteration, or basically like the original, royal blue. I actually like the white one a little bit better personally, but the original scheme that they have right now, it's close between that and the goat head, right? The black and reds coming back really were, they've got such a 90s feel to them. And, I think it's really been fun to see those back in the rotation this year, but it's hard to beat the original. I'm glad they went back to the royal blue, and it really, it gives them kind of a standout look, I feel like, and just a classic, clean look. But it is fun to see the black and reds work their way back in, because I think it brings a lot of people back to a time when this team was really good. And, they made some deep runs in the playoffs, and, they've changed it up there throughout the 2000s, whether it was different colors or different logos, but to come back home to the original, so to speak, I think that's my favorite one personally.
Love it. That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Matthew. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Have a good summer.
Take care.
Yeah, you too.
Well, Colton, a great episode. John Viveiros from Hot Take Hockey, Matthew Fairburn from The Athletic. Great stuff. We'll be right back. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. Yes, Dostal, we will touch on that right after this.
Looking for a new way to quench your thirst? Game Day Tarps is now an official Quench affiliate. Head on over to quench.ca/GameDayTarps podcast and use our code GameDayTarpsPodcast, all caps, all one word, for 15% off your total order. Stay cool this summer with the #1 sports drink on the market. Stay quenched.
Is the off-season bumming you out?
Yeah.
Do you wish you had more hockey content to consume?
Yeah.
Well, head on over to patreon.com/gamedaytarps and check out all the exclusive content we have to offer. Behind the scenes videos, in-depth analysis, and so much more. Select a membership tier and enjoy the content made only for you. Only at patreon.com/gamedaytarps.
Okay,
Throw it up. Throw it up.
we
Throw
got
it
some
up.
news. No, hold up, I'm going to Jeremiah's comment first. First, big shout out to the sports beer, Jeremiah Maxwell, for joining us today. He does great stuff. Dostal resigned. He's tossed in the chat. Dostal resigned for 5 times 6.5. Well, you got rid of John Gibson. You had to bring in you had to get your goalie of the future somehow. I've never, I don't think I've ever publicly said this, but I love Lucas Dostal. I'm a big fan of him. So love the signing for Anaheim. Think it's good. Anaheim's obviously got a young team that's kind of cooking things up. Obviously, no bias, of course, but Olin Zellweger is my favorite defenseman on that team. So it's a good signing. What do you make of that?
Not bad. Not bad. He's great. He played a couple years ago at the World Championships for the Czechs. Played at the World Juniors for the Czechs. He's always been a decent goalie for the Ducks. Hasn't let them down. He's played up to his expectations. Yeah, definitely. I definitely think it's a good signing by Anaheim. They can't go wrong with it.
Canada's under 18 team got announced. Can I read off some names?
Please do. Please do.
So the summer under 18 selection camp roster has been announced. So goaltenders are looking. I'm not going to read off all the team names, but Gavin Betts, Colin Ellsworth, Carter Esler, and Jason Schwabel. Those are your goaltenders. Defense, it's Lucas Ambrosio, Carson Carrolls, Cameron Chartrand, Callum Krosky, Landon DuPont, Ryan Lynn, Keaton Verhoff, Daxon Rudolph. I mean, the forwards list is a bazillion names long, so I'm not going to list all of them, but some of the names that are, relevant are Ethan Belchetz, Alessandro Diorio, Maddox Dagenet, big Quebec kid.
Yes.
Tynan Lawrence got an invite.
Yes.
So
New
looking
Brunswick.
forward to that. Jackson Jacobson, Liam and Marcus Ruck, Mathis Preston, who plays for Spokane. Awesome player, by the way, Mathis Preston. A lot of invites, but I like it. I like the team. I saw the U.S. made an announcement as well.
That was their Holinka camp, though.
That was the Holinka camp. Okay, so the U.S. announced their Holinka camp. So we got hockey coming back on. Like, this is a couple weeks. We got the Holinka starting. I'm excited.
I'm gonna have to reach out to my former instructor at the College of Sports Media, Tony Ambrosio from TSN, and see if Lucas Ambrosio on the back end of that U18 team has any relation to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Randy points out DuPont is something special. Landon DuPont is just unreal. I've said it before and I'll say it again. When I watched him this past year when he came through to play here in Kamloops, the dude doesn't even look like he's 15 years old. It's like watching a 19-year-old, 20-year-old defenseman out there just manhandles people. Like, we're talking like he can use one arm, be up against the boards, trying to kick a puck out, and he can just one hand stiff arm you out of the way and just get the puck. Like,
well, we're talking about a kid that scored 62 points as like a 14-year-old in the U18 league in the CSSHL. In the CSSHL. Yeah. Yeah.
No, very elite player. So I got nothing else to say for DuPont. Everything he does just speaks for itself. What else we got on the board? Anything else?
Something huge. If you guys haven't already noticed, down here in the bottom right-hand corner, we are a part of the Hockey Podcast Network now. We have joined them. So go check out everything that they have to offer over the Hockey Podcast Network. You'll be seeing lots of us over there, lots of more content coming out from us, our podcast side as well. And since we're there on that topic, I just want to give a shout out to the other three boys, Riley, Dakota, Dallas. You don't see much of them on the GDT live show because they're working their civilian lives.
There you go. As Willie would say, they're being civilians.
Yeah, they're being civilians, Willie. But we do give a big shout out to those three boys as well. This wouldn't be anything without them. But yeah, I guess with that, GDT Live and Game Day Tarps, it's on the uprise. Big news for us.
Yeah, and some sponsors coming our way as well. I can't really name too much, but the one sponsor I can list off is DraftKings. They will be sponsoring us, so we will have a sponsored betting episode every day. It's going to be fun. Really looking forward to it. My co-host is the best. Daeden does awesome work. Dakota, Riley, and Dallas do all the work behind the scenes, get all our clips up. They do lots. You guys got to give the actual podcast a listen to. It's fun. There's a lot of banter between the 5 of us. We get some great guests on as well. We've had Stankoven on. We've had Brady Schultz on, who's going to play for Quinnipiac. Oh my! I don't even think I said that
Throw
right.
that one in a blender.
Yeah, Quinnipiac. There we go. I'll try that again. So yeah, no, it's big news for us. Really looking forward to seeing what how we can continue to grow this. But seriously, it's not possible without you guys, as cliche as that is. So big shout out to our guys who are normally in the chat: Big Willie, Randy, John Bankart, Bill Beck. We love you guys. Thank you for supporting us.
Oh, Jeremiah, he's here as well.
And
He's
Jeremiah.
here on an occasional basis. We love you.
Yeah, Jeremiah too.
Thanks for tuning in.
I was not forgetting him. Don't worry. So really looking forward to it. Thank you guys so much for everything. Tomorrow, Tomorrow we have potentially somebody coming on from the QMJHL. Daden's going to kind of figure it out. But we have Zach Lang from the Oilers Nation boys going to come back, join us. We're going to chat some Oilers stuff. Leon and Connor were just playing in a beer league game last night and lost 6-2.
Hold on. I got a crazy story about that. So the video on Bar Down, shout out Oscar Creed, my former colleague at the College of Sports Media, or classmate, I should say. He was the one that made that video. Shout out Sam Glizerman as well at Bar Down. Those guys really helped me. Oscar was using the mic that I gave him. That mic used to go into my phone. It broke. I couldn't use it. So I gave it to him, and he's obviously making great stuff with it now, getting stuff done for Bar Down. So shout out to everyone. It's a great day here. It's a great Thursday. Colton, do you have anything else to say? I'm in a great mood.
No, I'm in a great mood too. I think everything's exciting. I gotta go down to the Blazers office. I gotta go down to the arena. I gotta do a few things down there today. So I'm looking forward to kind of meeting up with some guys and chatting with some of the staff. Hey, you know what? We're in a good mood. I'm gonna tell you guys. I'm gonna name drop a guest for next week. You guys want to know who we're getting on?
They say yes.
They say yes, of course. We're getting on Everett Silvertips forward and Detroit Red Wings prospect Carter Bear. Big thank you to the prospect Don Anthony Donati for that. Helped kind of set that one up for us. So we got Carter Bear on next week. We also got Jake O'Brien on next week. We also got Spencer Hyman on next week. And yes, Willie, one day we will get Sidney Crosby on the show. One day, Willie.
All right, fellas. Well, without further ado, we thank you once again. I think that does it for me and Colton here at GDT Live. We'll see you back tomorrow, 11, 2 Eastern, right back here on GDT Live.